Often pictures Casablanca in space, Babylon 5 was bold and far more ambitious than most television science fiction had any right to be in the 1990s. And still, more than 30 years later, so many people have never experienced this science fiction show. And that is a damn shame right there. So you could say this video is my humble attempt to nudge some of you guys a little closer to a show that dared to stand tall among many important science fiction series of the 1990s. And no, I'm not going to spend the whole video talking about Star Trek. Star Trek is not some undiscovered gem. Everybody and their friends know about it. But around the same time, Michael Straczynski created Babylon 5 and helped push television science fiction in a more serialized, novelistic direction.
The 5-year plan that changed television science fiction. The main reason Babylon 5 still has such a loyal fan base decades after it ended is that it was built around a long-term plan before its first regular episode aired, and much of the credit goes to writer, producer and series creator Michael Straczynski, better known as JMS. This was the 1990s we are talking about. Most American television was still heavily episodic. A problem would appear, the heroes would deal with it, and by the end of the episode, everyone's life would return close to normal. Many shows were designed so viewers could miss several episodes and still understand the next one. A series like Star Trek The Next Generation could produce more than 20 episodes a year, and most could be watched independently. But JMS wanted Babylon 5 to unfold like a novel made for television. Each episode would function like a chapter in a larger story with a beginning, middle and end. That was a very ambitious approach for the time. JMS has explained that when the Babylon 5 storyline came to him, it arrived as a saga rather than a simple collection of episodes. He structured the 5 seasons around stages comparable to the sections of a novel: introduction, rising action, complication, climax, and denouement. The regular series eventually ran for 110 episodes, and JMS wrote 92 of them himself. That is an extraordinary level of authorship for a television drama of that size. He did not have every sentence of all 5 seasons locked down before production began, and real-world problems forced him to modify parts of the plan, but the central arc, major destinations, and long-term themes were mapped in advance. That planning gave the show a sense of direction that many contemporary series did not have. Warner Brothers and the broadcasters still had reasons to be nervous. A serialized space opera with a 5-year structure was not the safest business proposition. The pilot film, The Gathering, aired on February 22nd, 1993. The regular series then premiered in January 1994 and eventually completed 5 seasons. The production also became famous for using computer-generated imagery extensively for spaceships and outer space sequences instead of relying mainly on physical miniatures. The CGI looks dated today, but it allowed the creators to stage camera movements, fleet battles and large-scale environments that would have been far more expensive using traditional model work. The gamble was rewarded. Babylon 5 won major recognition, including 2 Hugo Awards for Best Dramatic Presentation and Emmy Awards for its visual effects and makeup work. More importantly, it built an intensely loyal fan base that still recommends, debates and re-examines the series decades later. What was Babylon 5 actually about? Babylon 5 was set mainly on the enormous space station of the same name. The station was built in neutral territory after several devastating interstellar wars. Its purpose was to give humans and alien civilizations a place to meet, negotiate, trade, and hopefully prevent another major conflict. It was essentially a diplomatic city floating in space. The station's first regular series commander was Jeffrey Sinclair, played by Michael O'Hare. Sinclair had fought in the Earth-Minbari War and carried deep psychological scars from the Battle of the Line, the final battle of that conflict. His missing memories eventually became central to the series' mythology. Sinclair was not simply revealed to have always been Valen. Instead, he later travelled approximately 1,000 years into the past, used Minbari transformation technology, and became Valen, the mysterious historical and religious figure who guided Minbari society. That revelation closed one of the show's earliest mysteries. After Sinclair left the station, Captain John Sheridan, played by Bruce Boxleitner, became Babylon 5's new commander. Sheridan was a celebrated Earth-Minbari war hero, but his story gradually placed him at the centre of conflicts involving the Shadows, the Vorlons, the authoritarian Earth government, and the creation of the Interstellar Alliance. He eventually led Babylon 5's break from President Clark's regime and helped organize resistance against Earth's dictatorship. But the danger did not always come from ancient aliens or military fleets. One of the most disturbing threats came from humanity itself through the Psi Corps. The Corps existed to register, train, monitor, and control human telepaths. Its slogan was one of the most memorable lines in the series: "The Corps is mother, the Corps is father." Under Earth law, the human telepaths were required to register. Their options were essentially to join the Psi Corps, accept imprisonment, or take drugs that suppressed telepathic ability. Those drugs, commonly called sleepers, could cause severe physical and psychological side effects. The system presented itself as necessary for public safety, but the series gradually revealed the Psi Corps as manipulative, authoritarian, and deeply abusive. Its agents were raised to believe that telepaths were superior to ordinary humans, whom some Corps members dismissively called mundanes. The most famous Corps characters was Alfred Bester, played brilliantly by Walter Koenig. Bester was intelligent, smug, cruel, and convinced that his actions served the future of telepaths. He was not a simple cartoon villain. He could be terrifying, useful, witty, and occasionally sincere, often in the same episode. That more complexity defined Babylon 5. The show contained large wars, ancient prophecies, alien conspiracies, and apocalyptic threats, but it remained equally interested in the smaller battles involving prejudice, addiction, political compromise, faith, power, and personal loyalty. The characters were rarely completely right or completely wrong. A person could make the correct decision for selfish reasons, make a terrible decision while trying to protect someone, or become trapped between two options that were both morally ugly. That is where Babylon 5 became more than a show about aliens and laser battles. It asked whether people and civilizations could overcome pride, fear, nationalism, resentment, and ancient hatred long enough to survive. The characters who made Babylon 5 work. The series had a huge narrative, but the characters carried its emotional weight. Delenn began as the Minbari ambassador to Babylon 5. She was wise, secretive, compassionate, and deeply connected to the spiritual and political history of her people. Through a chrysalis transformation, she became a human Minbari hybrid. This change made her a bridge between two civilizations, but it also isolated her from parts of both. John Sheridan began as a decorated military officer and gradually became a rebel leader, diplomat, symbol of resistance, and eventually president of the Interstellar Alliance. Susan Ivanova was sharp, disciplined, sarcastic, emotionally guarded, and shaped by her family's suffering under the Psi Corps. Michael Garibaldi was Babylon 5's security chief, a tough investigator whose humour concealed trauma, alcoholism, broken relationships, and a deep fear of failing the people around him. Dr. Stephen Franklin was brilliant and compassionate, but his confidence and obsession with work eventually contributed to a stimulant addiction. Londo Mollari and G'Kar became the heart of the series in ways that few viewers could have predicted from the first season. Londo initially appeared as an entertaining, frustrated diplomat representing the declining Centauri Republic. His desire to restore his civilization's glory drew him toward Mr. Morden and the Shadows. The power he gained came with horrifying consequences. G'Kar began as an aggressive Narn ambassador driven by anger toward the Centauri, who had previously occupied and brutalized his people. Over time, suffering transformed him from a vengeful political operator into a spiritual teacher. The relationship between Londo and G'Kar became one of television's science fiction's greatest long-term character stories. Vercotto also received a meaningful evolution. He began as Londo's nervous assistant, but his conscience repeatedly pushed him to resist cruelty and help victims of Centauri policy. Even supporting characters were allowed to grow. Babylon 5 understood that large historical events are made from individual choices. The wars mattered because the people mattered.
Any word from the talk?
The real world struggled to get the show made. JMS developed the idea for Babylon 5 years before it reached television. He has described the long and difficult process of pitching it to studios and executives. One memorable story from his memoir, Becoming Superman, involves him cracking a tooth before an important Warner Brothers meeting. He reportedly drank a large amount of ice water to numb the pain and then pushed through the pitch while part of his mouth was numb. The show's production model was designed partly in response to JMS's experience on other series where poor planning caused budgets to spiral. Babylon 5 needed to appear enormous without costing as much as a major feature film every week. The station setting allowed standing sets to be reused, while CGI made large fleet battles and exotic spacecraft more manageable. The project was still risky, but careful planning, serialized storytelling, and a relatively disciplined production structure helped it survive.
20 feet. 10. 5.
Why the name Babylon mattered. The name Babylon carried several layers of meaning. Historically, Babylon was an ancient city associated with empire, culture, trade, religious symbolism, conquest, destruction, and the mixing of peoples. The biblical Tower of Babel story also connected the name with different languages and the struggle to communicate. That made Babylon an ideal name for a space station built to bring multiple species together. The show's larger mythology repeatedly explored conflict between order and chaos. The Vorlons believed younger civilizations should be guided through order, discipline, and obedience. The Shadows believed growth came through conflict, competition, destruction, and survival. Neither side treated the younger races as fully independent equals. The central revelation of the Shadow War was that both ancient powers had turned entire civilizations into pieces in an ideological game. Babylon 5 was not simply about defeating one evil enemy. It was about the younger races rejecting both systems and claiming the right to determine their own future. Hill Street Blues in space. One of the most important influences on Babylon 5 was not a traditional space opera. JMS repeatedly compared the concept to Hill Street Blues in space. Hill Street Blues was a groundbreaking police drama known for its ensemble cast, overlapping storylines, flawed characters, and continuing consequences. Instead of centering every episode on one flawless hero, it followed a crowded institution where personal and professional stories collided. Babylon 5 used a similar structure. The station functioned like a living city. Military officers, diplomats, workers, criminals, refugees, traders, doctors, religious leaders, and ordinary residents all moved through the same space. The show could jump from a massive diplomatic crisis to Garibaldi investigating a crime, Franklin treating a patient, or two ambassadors arguing over dinner. The characters were not perfect archetypes. They made mistakes, carried grudges, relapsed, lied, changed their minds, and lived with consequences. That ensemble realism helped make the space station feel inhabited rather than decorative.
Not good.
The literary and science fiction influences. Babylon 5 drew from an enormous range of literary, historical, religious, and science fiction sources. However, not every similarity proves direct borrowing. One frequently discussed comparison is E.E. Smith's Lensman series, which contains a vast conflict shaped by ancient cosmic powers. That broad idea resembles the struggle between the Vorlons and Shadows. Although Babylon 5 developed its own philosophy, characters, and structure, Alfred Bester's novel The Demolished Man was a clear influence on the treatment of telepathy. The novel takes place in a society where telepaths are organised, trained, classified, and integrated into law enforcement and social systems. JMS openly honoured Bester by naming the Psy-Corps character Alfred Bester. The Psy-Corps is not simply copied from one novel, but The Demolished Man clearly belongs among the important sources feeding that part of the world building. Isaac Asimov's Foundation series also offered a model for thinking about the rise and decline of civilizations across long historical periods. Frank Herbert's Dune demonstrated how science fiction could mix religion, politics, prophecy, ecology, family power, and imperial manipulation. Babylon 5 shares the appetite for layered politics and long-term historical change. The Lord of the Rings comparisons are among the most obvious. JMS has acknowledged Tolkien's influence, although Babylon 5 is not a direct space adaptation of Tolkien's story. The Shadows are repeatedly described through imagery of darkness, ancient evil, and returning war. The Rangers operate secretly to protect civilizations that may not understand their work. Sheridan travels to Zadum despite warnings that he may die there, falls into darkness, and later returns transformed with the help of Lorien. That naturally invites comparison to Gandalf's fall and return. The first one's leaving beyond the rim also echoes the departure of ancient beings at the end of Tolkien's age. Sheridan's final journey with Lorien carries a similar emotional feeling to characters leaving the familiar world for a place beyond ordinary mortal experience. The names Lorien and Narn also invite literary comparisons, but similarity does not automatically establish direct origin. Lorien clearly resembles Tolkien's Lorien as a name. Narn could remind readers of Tolkien's writings of C.S. Lewis's Narnia, but without firm creator confirmation, such connections should be treated as possibilities rather than facts. The visual effects that changed television. Babylon 5 was groundbreaking in its use of computer-generated imagery for television space sequences. Earlier science fiction productions generally relied heavily on physical miniatures, motion-control photography, and optical compositing. Babylon 5 used digital models for ships, stations, planets, and fleet battles. The visual effects were initially created using Commodore Amiga computers and video toaster technology before later production changes introduced more powerful systems. The early CGI can look rough today. Some ships appear too smooth, some lighting looks artificial, some movements lack the physical weight modern viewers expect, but at the time, the approach gave the creators flexibility that miniature-heavy productions did not always have. The virtual camera can move around ships, through formations, and into battles in ways that would have been expensive or difficult with physical models. The show also planned for widescreen presentation, though the complicated production and effects process later created problems for widescreen home video versions. The live-action footage was protected for a wider frame, but many effects were finished for 4:3 presentation. Later widescreen releases sometimes cropped or enlarged effects shots, reducing visual quality. So Babylon 5 was forward-thinking, but the final result was not as simple as filming the whole finished series perfectly for future widescreen television. The opening credits changed with the story. Another distinctive element was the changing title sequence. Each season received a different narration and presentation, reflecting the current stage of the story. Season 1 described Babylon 5 as humanity's last, best hope for peace. By Season 3, Susan Ivanova's opening narration declared, "The Babylon Project was our last, best hope for peace, it failed. That one sentence immediately told viewers that the series had moved from diplomacy into war. The changing introductions made the credits part of the storytelling. They reminded viewers that this was not a static universe. The political situation, character roles, alliances, and purpose of the station kept evolving.
Approaching the barrier. Are you ready?
The trapdoors that saved the story. A 5-year serialized plan creates a major problem. What happens when an actor leaves? JMS prepared for that possibility by creating what he called trapdoors. A trapdoor was a narrative path that allowed a character to leave without destroying the entire long-term story. The clearest example involved Michael O'Hare, who played Jeffrey Sinclair. O'Hare left the regular cast after season 1 because he was experiencing serious mental health difficulties. JMS kept the reason private until after O'Hare's death, honouring a promise he had made to the actor. Sinclair was reassigned as Earth's ambassador to Minbar, allowing Bruce Boxleitner's John Sheridan to take command of Babylon 5. Sinclair later returned for crucial episodes that completed his transformation into Valen. Other departures required additional adjustments. Andrea Thompson left the role of Talia Winters. Patricia Tallman returned as Lyta Alexander, allowing Lyta to become central to the Vorlon and Telepath storylines. When Claudia Christian did not return for season 5, Susan Ivanova was promoted to captain and given command of a Warlock-class destroyer. Tracy Scoggins joined as Captain Elizabeth Lockley and became the new commander of Babylon 5 after Sheridan left the station to lead the Interstellar Alliance. Dr. Benjamin Carl from the pilot was replaced by Dr. Stephen Franklin in the regular series. These changes were not always invisible, but the broader story survived because the narrative had room to transfer functions from one character to another.
Keep them away from the colony.
Why Season 4 feels like a finale. Babylon 5 originally aired through the Primetime Entertainment Network, commonly called PTEN. PTEN was not a conventional network like CBS or NBC. It was a programming consortium that distributed original shows to participating stations. As PTEN's future became uncertain, Babylon 5 faced the possibility that Season 4 would be its last. JMS did not want the series to end with its central conflicts unresolved, so major material originally expected to stretch further into the 5th year was compressed into Season 4. That season brought the Shadow War to its conclusion, and then moved into the campaign against President Clark's authoritarian Earth government. The result is an unusually intense run of episodes. The ancient conflict ends, Sheridan turns toward Earth, the Resistance advances, Clark's regime collapses, the Interstellar Alliance is created. It feels like several finales stacked together because, in production terms, the creators had to prepare for the possibility that no 5th season would exist. JMS also filmed the series finale, Sleeping in Light, during the 4th production year. The episode takes place about 20 years after the main story and reveals the final fate of Sheridan and Babylon 5. Had the series ended after Season 4, Sleeping in Light would have served as the finale.
Impure! Yes, impure!
How TNT saved Season 5. TNT stepped in and ordered a 5th season. Because Sleeping in Light had already been produced, it was held back for the end of Season 5. The Season 4 finale slot was instead filled by The Deconstruction of Falling Stars, an episode showing how future generations interpreted and distorted the history of Babylon 5. Season 5 allowed JMS to complete the original 5-year structure, but it faced several disadvantages. Many of the largest conflicts had already been resolved in Season 4. The opening part of Season 5 focused heavily on Byron and a community of rogue telepaths seeking a home. That storyline became controversial among viewers and helped establish conditions connected to the later Telepath War, but the full war itself was not depicted in the regular series. The later episodes shifted towards a Centauri crisis involving the Drac, Londo's future, and the growing tragedy surrounding Centauri Prime. Season 5 may feel less explosive than Season 4, but it contains several of the show's most emotional episodes. It gives the characters time to leave the station, confront their futures, and say goodbye. Without TNT, the series still would have had a usable ending, but Season 5 allowed Babylon 5 to achieve the 5-season goal JMS had envisioned. How Babylon 5 actually ended. The final regular episode, Sleeping in Light, takes place approximately 20 years after the formation of the Interstellar Alliance. Sheridan knows that the artificial energy Lorian gave him after Zadum is finally running out. He has only a short time left to live. Sheridan and Delenn invited several surviving friends to Minbar for one final dinner. Ivanova, Garibaldi, Franklin, Veer and others gather to remember the past. Sheridan then leaves quietly aboard a White Star. He visits Babylon 5, which has become obsolete and is scheduled for demolition. Afterwards, he travels to Coriana 6, the site where the younger races rejected the Vorlons and Shadows. There, Lorian appears. Sheridan's physical body is later found absent from the ship. Lorian takes him beyond the rim, leaving his ultimate state deliberately mysterious. Babylon 5 is then destroyed in a controlled demolition. The station explodes as the people who once lived and worked there watch from a distance. It is one of science fiction television's most emotional endings because it closes both a personal life and an era of history. The final episode does not end with the villain's defeat. It ends with memory, mortality, friendship, and the idea that even the greatest structures eventually disappear.
Just mundane.
The television films and Crusade. The Babylon 5 universe expanded through several feature-length television productions. The Gathering served as the original pilot. In the beginning, explored the Earth-Minbari War. Third Space introduced an ancient threat connected to a dangerous Vorlon artifact. The River of Souls involved the Soul Hunters. A Call to Arms directly established the premise of the spin-off series Crusade. There was also The Legend of the Rangers, a later attempted spin-off pilot. In A Call to Arms, the Drak attacked Earth. After failing to destroy the planet with the Shadow Planet Killer, they released a deadly plague into Earth's atmosphere. The plague was expected to adapt to human biology and kill the planet's population within approximately 5 years. The spin-off Crusade followed the advanced starship Excalibur as its crew searched the galaxy for a cure. Crusade had a strong premise, but production became trapped in conflict between TNT executives and the creative team. TNT requested changes involving tone, sexuality, action, uniforms, and episode structure. The production order also became confused when the network required a new introductory episode and altered the intended broadcast sequence. Only 13 episodes were produced. TNT cancelled the series before its first episode aired, although the completed episodes were later broadcast. The show therefore ended without resolving the plague storyline.
Back on your thrusters.
The Lost Tales and projects that never happened. Babylon 5, The Lost Tales, was conceived as an anthology project that could tell smaller stories from different points in the timeline. Only one direct-to-video release, Voices in the Dark, was completed in 2007. It contained 2 connected stories centered on President Sheridan and Elizabeth Lockley. JMS later decided not to continue because he felt the available budget was too small to deliver the quality the franchise required. Another planned feature, The Memory of Shadows, entered development in the mid-2000s. It would have dealt with shadow technology and included characters connected to the original series. The project never entered full production. For years, there were also periodic discussions about television revivals, theatrical films, and additional spin-offs, but most did not move forward. The Road Home and the proposed reboot. In September 2021, a from-the-ground-up Babylon 5 reboot was announced as being in development for the CW. JMS wrote the proposed pilot and was expected to run the new series if it received an order. The new version was described as focusing on John Sheridan arriving at Babylon 5 and becoming involved in a conflict with a far more advanced civilization. However, development did not result in a confirmed production order. The CW later underwent major ownership, leadership, and programming changes. As of June 2026, there is no officially announced cast, production date, completed live-action season, or release date for that reboot, so it should not be described as an actively filming series. The most recent completed screen project is Babylon 5 The Road Home, an animated film released in August 2023. Written by JMS, the film follows Sheridan as he becomes displaced through time, alternate realities, and different versions of Babylon 5's history. Several surviving original cast members return to voice their characters. The Road Home allowed the franchise to revisit familiar people and settings without replacing the original continuity. Why Babylon 5 was flawed, but still brilliant. If I'm being completely truthful, my first impression of Babylon 5 was not perfect. The early CGI can look awkward. Some of the acting in the beginning is theatrical, the dialogue occasionally feels overly formal, and some of the alien makeup has aged better than others, but sticking with the series changes the experience. The performances become stronger as the actors settle into their characters. The dialogue becomes richer as the political and emotional stakes increase. Friendships grow, alliances collapse, relationships develop over years instead of episodes. Londo and G'Kar are the clearest example. Their story could not have worked with a reset button at the end of every episode. The show needed time for hatred, guilt, understanding, respect, and tragedy to accumulate. Sheridan and Delen's relationship also grows across political, cultural, spiritual, and personal boundaries. Babylon 5 plants ideas early and pays them off seasons later. A strange line from Season 1 may become crucial in Season 3 or Season 4. A minor character may return years later with a major role. A prophecy may be technically fulfilled in a way nobody expected. The show rewards attention. That also means it is not ideal background television while you scroll through your phone. Babylon 5 wants you to remember. The Babylon 5 and Deep Space Nine controversy. No discussions of Babylon 5 is complete without addressing Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Before Warner Brothers moved forward with Babylon 5, JMS pitched the project to Paramount in 1989. The pitch included a series Bible, artwork, character material, and information about a drama set on a space station. Paramount did not produce it. Years later, Paramount developed Deep Space Nine, another science fiction series centered on a space station. Deep Space Nine premiered in January 1993. The Babylon 5 pilot aired the following month, while its regular weekly series began in 1994. The timing created an obvious problem. Viewers unfamiliar with the development history could assume Babylon 5 had copied Deep Space Nine simply because Deep Space Nine reached regular television first. JMS expressed serious frustration about the similarities. However, he generally distinguished between Paramount executives who may have had access to his pitch and Deep Space Nine's creators Michael Piller and Rick Berman, whom he did not directly accuse of stealing his material. The two shows share broad features. Both take place on space stations near politically important regions. Both involve diplomacy, trade, religion, war, and continuing storylines. Both became darker and more serialized as they progressed. But the specific stories, structures, philosophies, characters, and long-term destinations differ greatly. Deep Space Nine remained part of the Star Trek universe and explored the Federation, Bajor, Cardassia, and the Dominion. Babylon 5 followed a pre-planned rise and fall saga involving the Shadows, Vorlons, Earth Dictatorship, the Centauri, Narn, Minbari, and the Interstellar Alliance. There is no publicly documented court judgment proving that Paramount plagiarized Babylon 5. Patricia Tallman later referred to an alleged settlement, but no publicly verifiable legal record has established that claim as fact. So the safest conclusion is that the development history raises legitimate questions, but a proven plagiarism case does not exist in the public record. The rivalry also became far more aggressive among fans than among the casts. Majel Barrett appeared on Babylon 5. Bill Mumy appeared on Deep Space Nine. Actors from the shows interacted socially, and the productions were not engaged in some endless personal war. Both series ultimately became landmarks of 1990s science fiction. There is room for both. Did Babylon 5 influence Mass Effect? The similarities between Babylon 5 and Mass Effect are fun to discuss. Babylon 5 is a politically important multi-species station. Mass Effect has the Citadel. Babylon 5 has ancient powers manipulating younger civilizations. Mass Effect has the Reapers and earlier cycles of galactic destruction. Both feature interspecies diplomacy, advanced technology, extinct civilizations, military alliances, and the struggle to unite rival species against an overwhelming enemy. But resemblance does not prove direct influence. Unless the Mass Effect creators clearly identify Babylon 5 as a source, the comparison should remain an informed fan observation rather than a confirmed production fact. Science fiction repeatedly returns to ancient civilizations, galactic councils, space stations, and cyclical threats. Babylon 5 may well have contributed to the genre environment that made Mass Effect possible, but that is different from proving that specific characters or plotlines were copied. So, WTF happened to Babylon 5? Babylon 5 was conceived as a 5-year television novel. It survived an uncertain distribution system, actor departures, network instability, budget limitations, production conflicts, and the fear that it might be cancelled before reaching its planned ending. Season 4 compressed major storylines because the creators could not count on renewal. TNT then saved the 5th season, allowing the show to complete its overall structure. The main series ended in 1998 with one of the most emotionally complete finales in science fiction television. The franchise continued through television films, Crusade, The Legend of the Rangers, The Lost Tales, novels, comics, audio projects, and eventually The Road Home. Some projects ended early, some never moved beyond development. The proposed live-action reboot has not yet become a produced series, but Babylon 5 itself did what very few ambitious shows managed to do. It reached the end. It told a story about empires rising and falling, people becoming better or worse, ancient powers losing control, and younger civilizations learning to choose their own future. Its effects have aged. Some episodes are weaker than others, parts of Season 5 divide audiences, but the larger achievement remains intact. Babylon 5 helped demonstrate that television science fiction could tell one enormous, connected story across multiple years and still give that story a real ending. That is why people are still talking about it. That is why new viewers still discover it. And that is why, whenever someone mentions the greatest science fiction television shows ever made, Babylon 5 still deserves a seat at the table. So if you enjoyed this breakdown, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me your favourite Babylon 5 character in the comments. And if your answer is Gakar or Londo, respect.